My mother stole $177K from my dead father's inheritance by faking an emergency surgery. But when I discovered she was on vacation in Paris with my sister, I sued them, destroyed their credit, and now they owe me everything with interest. I'm 29 years old. I work in accounting for a mid-sized firm. And honestly, I need to get this story off my chest because what my own mother did to me like a year and a half ago still leaves me speechless when I think about it. And look, I'm not one of those people who goes around talking bad about their family or looking for drama. But what happened was so brazen, so calculated, that I feel like if I don't tell it, I'm going to explode. Basically, my mom, after years of ignoring me, stole almost all the money my dad left me when he died and used it to go on vacation to Paris. Yes, you read that right. Paris. With my sister. While I thought she was in the hospital dying. But let me backtrack a little because this didn't start there. It started much earlier. When I was like 8 years old and my parents got divorced. It was one of those separations that were supposedly going to be amicable. You know, like, this is best for everyone. But the truth is that my mom, Carol, basically decided it wasn't a priority in her new life. At first, we had regular visits, alternating weekends and all that, but when she married Dennis, everything changed. Dennis was one of those guys who come in and want to make a new family from scratch. And when my half-sister Shannon was born, I was already like old furniture that gets in the way. Shannon was perfect for them. She was their daughter together, the apple of their eye, and I was just the daughter from Carol's previous marriage. I remember perfectly the day I knew they didn't want me there anymore. I was 13 years old. I had gone to spend the weekend with them, and I heard Dennis talking to my mom in the kitchen. I was in the hallway because I had gone down for water or something, and I heard him say, "We don't need her here anymore. Carol, she's old enough now. She can stay with Nathan if she wants." And my mom, instead of defending me or saying something, just sighed and said, "You're right. It's easier that way." I stood there with the glass in my hand feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach, you know? Because it's one thing to feel like you don't fit in, and quite another to hear your own mother basically say she agrees with removing you from her life. After that, I went to live with my dad full-time. Nathan, my dad, was literally the opposite of my mom. He was a math teacher at a middle school, made decent money but nothing spectacular. We lived in a modest but comfortable house, and most importantly, he really loved me. Not out of obligation, but for real. He made sure I had everything I needed. He helped me with homework, even when he came home tired from work. He went to all my school events, and never, ever, made me feel like I was a burden. With him, I thrived. I did well in school, made friends, started to feel like a normal person again. My mom basically disappeared from my life. She sent me messages on my birthday and at Christmas. That was it. She didn't come to my high school graduation. She didn't call me when I got into college. Nothing. When I was 23 years old and in my first real job, my dad called me one day and asked me to come to dinner. I was already living in my own apartment, like half an hour from him. And when I got there, I knew something was wrong because he had that face. That expression you put on when you have to say something horrible but you're trying to keep your composure. He sat down with me at the kitchen table, the same one where we had dinner thousands of times, and told me, "Haley, I've been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4, and there's not much they can do." Just like that. Straight up. No beating around the bush. Because that's how he was. Honest to the end. They told me he maybe had a year, if lucky. Turned out not even that. 4 months after that day in the kitchen, my dad died. 4 months. I didn't even have time to process that I was going to lose him before I lost him. Those last months were a nightmare, watching him deteriorate so fast. Watching him go from being this strong man who had taken care of me my whole life to someone who could barely get out of bed. I went every day after work, stayed with him, helped him with everything. And my mom, you know what my mom did? Nothing. She sent flowers to the funeral. Flowers. She didn't even come to say goodbye to the man she was married to, with whom she had a daughter. But, well, by that point I didn't expect anything from her anymore. What I didn't know was that my dad had left me everything. He had a considerable life insurance from his job, some savings, his house. Everything added up to like $300,000 after paying medical debts and the funeral. It was a huge amount for me. Like more money than I had seen in my life. I didn't touch it at first. I was too busy dealing with grief and trying to function as a human being. But after a few months, I started thinking about what to do with the money. I talked to a financial advisor, put most of it in conservative investments, used some to pay off my student loans, kept some for emergencies. I was being responsible, I think, or at least trying to be. And then, like 6 months after my dad died, my mom appeared, literally out of nowhere. She sent me a long message, like 3 paragraphs, saying that Dennis had passed away recently, that she had been thinking a lot about me, that she regretted not being a better mother, that she wanted to reconnect. And I, idiot me, thought, well, she also lost someone. Maybe this changed her. Maybe now that Dennis isn't around, she'll be different. Because at the end of the day, as much as she had hurt me, she was still my mom, you know? And part of me, that stupid hopeful part that never grows up, wanted to believe we could fix things. We started meeting for coffee or lunch, like once every 2 weeks. At first it was weird, awkward, lots of long silences where neither of us knew what to say. But after a couple of months, it felt almost normal. She asked me about my work. I asked her how Shannon was. We talked about superficial things, but at least we talked. Shannon sometimes came with her. She was like 19 at the time, studying graphic design or something. And honestly, she was always kind of cold to me, but not hostile either. Just distant, like I was more of an acquaintance than her sister. I started thinking that maybe, just maybe, we could build something new. It wasn't going to be the perfect mother-daughter relationship we never had, but it could be something. And then came the day that changed everything. It had been like 8 months of us reconnecting, and my mom called me sounding really bad, like trembling voice, heavy breathing, the whole production. She told me she had been having horrible back pain, that she had gone to the doctor and needed emergency surgery, something about herniated discs that were pressing on important nerves, and that if she didn't get operated on soon, she could be paralyzed. She told me the specialist she needed didn't take her insurance, that she needed $20,000 to start the process, that the hospital required upfront payment for these cases. And then she said, with that desperate mother voice, "Haley, I know I have no right to ask you for anything after everything, but I have no one else. Shannon is in college and doesn't have that kind of money. I don't know what to do. I'm so scared." I was in shock. I mean, my mom sounded genuinely terrified, and despite our complicated history, the idea that she could be paralyzed destroyed me. I told her, of course, that I was going to help her, not to worry about the money. She cried, thanked me like 1,000 times, told me I was her angel, that she was going to make all this up to me someday. She texted me the account number and all the details. And here comes the part where I was completely stupid. I transferred $20,000. Easy. But then she called me the next day saying she had just talked to the hospital again, and it turned out there were going to be more procedures than they thought, that she needed special implants, that the total cost was higher, like $50,000 total, to make sure everything went well. I didn't even hesitate much, honestly. I was scared for her. I wanted her to be okay, and I had my dad's money sitting there. I thought, that's what money is for, right? For emergencies. To help family when they need it. So I transferred her another $30,000. But then, like 2 days later, she called me again, crying harder, saying she had talked to the medical team and they were going to have to do an additional exploratory surgery because they found something else in the studies, and that she needed another $60,000 to cover everything, to be sure she was going to be okay. And at that point, I was already so deep into this, so convinced that my mom was really in danger, that I thought, what does money matter if she's going to be paralyzed? My dad would have wanted me to help. It's the right thing. So I ended up transferring her $177,000. $177,000. More than half of my inheritance. I gave it to her over the course of like a week and a half, in several transfers because my bank had daily limits. She sent me the hospital details, told me the surgery was scheduled for such and such date, that Shannon was going with her because it had to be done at a specialist hospital in another state, like 5 hours from where we lived. She sent me messages saying how grateful she was, how much it meant to her that I was there despite everything. And I felt good. I felt like a good daughter, like someone who had forgiven and was doing the right thing. They supposedly left for the hospital on a Thursday. My mom sent me a message that morning saying they were leaving, that Shannon was going to drive, that she'd keep me informed. Over the next few days, I got some messages. Nothing very detailed. Just like, I'm in recovery. Everything went well. Thanks again, my love. I responded asking how she felt, if she needed anything, but the responses were short. Shannon also sent me a couple of messages saying Mom was sleeping a lot because of the medications, but that everything was under control. I was calm, relieved that it had gone well, thinking about when they could come back and if I could go visit her. And then, like 5 days after the surgery was supposedly done, my friend Brenda called me. Brenda and I have known each other since college. She knows my whole family history. She's one of the few people I really talk to about these things. She called me like at 9 at night and told me, Haley, I don't know how to tell you this, but you need to see something. I'm going to send you some screenshots right now. I asked her what she was talking about, and she just said, just look at them, please. She sent me like 6 screenshots from Shannon's Instagram. And I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't process what I was seeing. Shannon was in Paris. In Paris. There were photos of her in front of the Eiffel Tower, at an elegant cafe, at the Louvre, all uploaded that same day with location and everything. She was wearing new clothes, expensive, like complete designer outfits that I could recognize because I once worked with a client who wouldn't stop talking about those brands. And in one of the photos, in the background, half blurry but definitely visible, was my mom, Carol, sitting at a restaurant table, smiling, with a glass of wine in her hand. She didn't look sick. She didn't look like someone who had just come out of major back surgery. She looked happy, relaxed, on vacation. I stared at the phone for I don't know how long, like frozen, feeling like the floor was opening up beneath me. Brenda was still on the line, asking if I was okay. But I couldn't speak. Finally, I told her I had to hang up, that I'd talk to her later, and I started searching for more. I went into every social media profile I could find, because Shannon had them public, like without any precaution. There were more photos, stories, everything documenting a luxury trip to Paris, expensive hotels, expensive restaurants, shopping at elegant boutiques. There was a photo of her with Louis Vuitton bags, another at a spa, another on a boat tour of the Seine, and my mom appeared in several, always in the background or in a group, but she was there, clearly enjoying the trip. I called the hospital my mom had told me about, the name she had sent me by message. The receptionist told me they had no record of Carol with our last name, neither as a current patient nor in the last 2 weeks. I gave her other information, date of birth, everything I knew, and nothing. She didn't exist. They hadn't even had a back surgery scheduled with those characteristics on those dates. I called my bank and asked them to stop the last transfer that was still processing, like $8,000 I had sent to cover recovery expenses. Luckily, they caught it in time. But the rest, the $177,000, was already in her account. She had already used it. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in my apartment looking at the photos over and over again, trying to understand how someone could do this. How my own mother could invent an illness, lie to me so blatantly, and use the money my dad had left me. My dad's last gift, to go on vacation to Europe with my sister. And the worst part is that she had planned it, you know? It wasn't an impulse. It was calculated. She had prepared me months before by reconnecting with me, earning my trust, waiting for the perfect moment. I had been so naive, so desperate to have a relationship with her, that I didn't even think to verify anything. The messages started coming in like the next day. My mom and Shannon obviously realized I knew because Brenda wasn't the only friend who saw the photos. Several people saw them and contacted me. My mom first tried to play dumb, sent me a message asking how I was, acting normal. I responded with a screenshot of Shannon in Paris and told her, explain this to me. It took her like 3 hours to respond, and when she did, it was with a ridiculous story about how the doctor had said she needed to relax before the surgery, that the trip had been the doctor's idea, that Shannon had won the tickets in a contest. Lies upon lies, like she wasn't even trying to make it sound credible. Shannon sent me a separate message saying I was misinterpreting everything, that Mom had had the surgery but at a different hospital, that the photos were from before, that I was being overdramatic for making such a big deal. I told her the photos had date and location in real time, and she just stopped responding. Then my mom changed tactics, started saying yes, she had lied about the surgery, but she really needed the money for important debts, that Dennis had left her bankrupt, that she didn't know how else to ask me for help. I asked her then why she hadn't told me the truth, why she needed to invent an illness, and she had no real answer. Just more excuses, more stories that contradicted each other. The last straw was when she sent me what was supposedly a hospital bill, a PDF document that looked faker than a $3 bill. Spelling errors, weird format, numbers that didn't add up, blurry and pixelated hospital logo. She thought I was so stupid. I wasn't going to notice it was completely made up. I told her I knew it was fake, that I had called the hospital, that I knew perfectly well she had never been there. And that's when she finally stopped responding. Just silence. But the story doesn't end there, because Shannon, my dear half-sister, decided to open a GoFundMe like 2 weeks later. The title was something like, "Student Stranded in Europe Needs Help to Get Home." She told a whole story about how she had gone on an academic exchange, how she had been robbed, how she had no money for the return flight. She was asking for $5,000. She didn't even mention that she had been in Paris on vacation with stolen money. My cousin Catherine, who had also been a victim of my mom's manipulations in the past, sent me the GoFundMe link laughing because she couldn't believe the audacity. Nobody donated, by the way. $0. Because it turns out enough people knew the truth. Eventually they came back. I don't know how they got the flights, if they sold some of what they bought or what, but they came back. And they didn't learn anything. Zero remorse. My mom tried to contact me several times, long messages saying she was so sorry, that she had made a mistake, that we were family, and families forgive. Shannon blocked me on everything when I told her she was an accomplice to fraud. And then the real problems started for them. Turns out my mom had spent everything, absolutely everything, on the trip and buying herself things. She hadn't paid rent in like 3 months. When her apartment landlord finally confronted her, she told him I had promised to pay her rent, that it was my responsibility. The landlord called me, confused, asking when I was going to send the payment. I explained to him that I hadn't promised him anything, that that was another one of my mom's lies, and that I wasn't going to pay a single cent. That's when I hired a lawyer. I spent like $5,000 on legal fees, but I didn't care. I needed to do this right. We filed a lawsuit for fraud and defamation, with all the evidence, the messages, the bank transfers, the Paris photos, everything. My mom tried to get her own lawyer, but apparently none of them wanted to take her case because it was so obvious what she had done. She ended up representing herself in court, and it was a disaster. She tried to say the money had been a gift, that I had given it to her voluntarily, but I had all the messages where she invented the medical emergency, where she asked me for the money specifically for surgeries, for treatments. The judge didn't even take long to decide. He ruled in my favor, ordered her to pay me back the full $177,000, plus interest and legal costs. Of course, she doesn't have the money to pay me. She spent it all. But now she has a court order against her, her credit is destroyed, and every cent she earns is going to have to go to paying me back. They're going to garnish her wages if she gets a job, they're going to take anything of value she has. And Shannon is also in trouble because she was an accomplice. She knew perfectly well what they were doing. They both basically ruined their lives for a trip to Paris. I cut contact completely. I blocked them on everything. Phone, social media, email, everything. I told my extended family, the few relatives I have a relationship with, that I didn't want to know anything about them, that if they tried to contact me through others, I was going to cut them off too. My grandma, my dad's mom, was very supportive through all this. She told me she was proud of me for standing up for myself, that Nathan would have been proud too. She also cut contact with Carol, told her she was a disgrace and didn't want to see her again. It's been like 8 months since the lawsuit. I've been going to therapy, which honestly has helped me a lot to process all this. At first, I was furious all the time, couldn't sleep, couldn't concentrate at work, but little by little, I've been letting go of that anger because I realized it was only hurting myself. My mom isn't worth my emotional energy. She never was. I've recovered some of the money, like $30,000 so far through garnishments and forced payments, and I know it'll probably take years to recover the rest, if I ever recover it all. But it's okay, it's not really about the money anymore. At work, they gave me a promotion like 3 months ago. Now I'm a supervisor in my department. I earn quite a bit more. I'm slowly rebuilding my savings. I bought a small condo. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. And every time I pay the mortgage, I think about my dad and how he always taught me to be responsible, to work hard, to take care of myself. That money my mom stole was from him. It was his way of making sure I'd be okay after he was gone. And she used it for selfies in Paris. But she couldn't steal what really mattered, which was everything my dad taught me, the person he helped me become. My mom tried to contact me again like a month ago, used someone else's phone to call me. I hung up without saying anything. Shannon sent me a physical letter to my work. I don't even know how she got the address, saying she missed having a sister. I threw it in the trash without finishing reading it. I have nothing to say to them, nothing to hear from them. I'm not angry anymore. That's the weird thing. I don't feel that fury I felt before. Now I just feel nothing. Like total indifference. They're strangers to me. Less than strangers, because at least I give strangers the benefit of the doubt. Last week, I was sorting through old photos and found one from when my dad took me to my first day of college, both of us in front of the dorm building, him with that huge smile because he was so proud. I put it in a frame in my living room. That photo, that memory, that's my family. My dad, my grandma, my friends like Brenda, who supported me when everything exploded, my cousin Catherine, who understands exactly what it's like to deal with Carol's manipulation. That's my family. Not two people who saw me as an ATM and had the gall to play victim when they got caught. I guess the lesson here, if there is one, is that forgiveness isn't always the right answer. Sometimes people don't deserve another chance. Sometimes protecting yourself and setting firm boundaries is the healthiest thing you can do. And it's okay to admit that someone, even your mother, can be a bad person who doesn't have your best interests at heart. I don't have to forgive her to move on with my life. I already moved on. And I did it without her. And I'm fine. Better than fine. Really. I have peace. Something I definitely didn't have when I was trying to make that relationship work. And that, in the end, is worth much more than any amount of money.